Anyway, we're here tonight to talk a little bit about some of the progress that we're making in the state capital, Sacramento, California, on those three bad telecom bills. But we have a pleasure in the first 15 minutes. We have one of the best experts in the country who kind of spans two bodies of knowledge. His name is Professor Trevor Marshall. He's got a PhD from Australia. He could tell you more about that, but I just want to give you some background. He has designed microwave circuits and antennas, and he has records and doing the radio frequency transmissions over long distances. He's taught engineering. He understands antennas completely. And in addition, he then did a whole bunch of biological research about the effects of microwave radiation on people. So he's got recent papers published, Human Microbiome and Autoimmunity, Inflammatory Disease and the Human Microbiome, and Electrosmog and Autoimmune Disease. That's because he's a founder and president of the Autoimmunity Research Foundation. We are so happy to have you on with us, Trevor. Can you tell us a little bit about the FCC comment? Well, a little about yourself first, and then the FCC comment you wrote in June of 2020.
So I saw what the FCC was doing, fooling around with these so-called safety standards. And when they put out the recent recommendations, they called for submissions. And so I thought I'd point out the errors in their thinking and write back a submission pointing out those errors. And, the main error that they make is they keep thinking in terms of what radiation is safe rather than what radiation do we need to get the job done. This is quite unique. I mean, if you look at atomic radiation or other forms of radiation, they're not treated in this way. But for some reason, mankind has convinced itself that radio waves are harmless. And then they've spent the subsequent 100 years trying to prove that they're harmless. And the FCC is an institution which is in place to try and reinforce that harmless nature of what we really know through 100 years of science as not being harmless. What they're doing is they're putting in large high-power towers that are intended to broadcast to homes and to get right into the center of homes. In fact, they have a measurement scheme called the bathroom scheme.
That's right.
Where you're supposed to measure the level in the bathroom of a house.
Right through the tile into the shower stall.
That's right.
Yeah. On the logic that that's likely to be the most shielded house in the room in the house. The problem, of course, is that you don't use your phone all that much in the bathroom. And even if you could get an incoming call, there's no way you're going to get an outgoing call because the power that your phone puts out is very low, somewhere around 5 to 10 watts peak, whereas the power that the cell towers are putting out is 10,000 watts peak. And there's no sense in that. There's a theorem in microwaves called reciprocity, which basically says you can change around the transmitter and the receiver and the signal strength at each end will remain the same. Doesn't matter whether you're transmitting from point A to point B or whether you're transmitting from point B to point A, you're going to get the same signal path attenuation and the same.
So once you have
strength.
the power output of the phone, what's the point of going above that?
Yes.
None.
Yes. Well, maybe you could justify maybe 10 times above that to allow it to get further, deeper into the bathroom. But it's a bit hard to justify the levels that they're using now. Our cities are absolutely blanketed in not only harmful levels of radiation, known proven harmful levels of radiation, but unnecessary. Engineers climb mountains because they can. The mountain's there, so they climb it. And nobody is saying, now, look, wait a minute, you really should be reading this piece of literature or this article which says maybe you should look at using what you need instead of what you can. And that's a big problem. The FCC themselves, in a footnote to their safety regulations, say this, if I can find it. They say, noting that the bioinitiative report suggested limits which would result in compliance zones around base stations that would extend several kilometres for a macro base station. In other words, they're saying that if they implemented this bioinitiative report level, that would mean that they'd really have to provide a quiet zone or a residence-free zone for a couple of kilometres around base stations, which is exactly what the studies are saying.
That's exactly right. If we did that, we'd all be fine.
Yeah, we'd all be fine. No worries. The signal falls off as a distance.
By the square of the distance, right?
Square of the distance, sorry, yes. So that if you've got a cell antenna on the light pole at the end of your driveway, then let's say 30 feet away from your bedroom, and you've got a tower about half a mile away, let's say 3,000 feet to make the maths easy, 100 times closer, but 10,000 times stronger. And that's a big deal. Now, what is this bioinitiative report? This bioinitiative report is what the physicians and scientific researchers found they could measure effects with. In other words, if they take a certain level of radiation and run a study on kids' concentration levels or adult sleeping levels or whatever, then what level could they actually detect a difference at? In other words, what is a threshold of harm to the human being? That's what the bioinitiative level is. It's what the doctors are telling them. And what the FCC is turning around and saying in this order is, we don't care about the doctors. We're engineers. We know what it's all about.
We had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old in Sacramento, and they only lasted 3 weeks before they got sick. And how much was that? Well, the whole thing is done with decibel milliwatt. Okay, that's how radio is done. Decibel milliwatt is just an arbitrary scale where they set 0 at 1/1000th of a watt. Okay, that's the scale. And then you kind of scale down from that. So every 10 on that scale is a factor of 10. Mm-hmm. So the difference between, say, minus 80 and minus 50 is, 3 zeros or 1,000 times. You see, that's the way to think about it. So, what do they need to make a phone call? Well, something like minus 80. Well, what was in that bedroom? Minus 10. Oh, my goodness. That's 30 million times more. That's a lot more power than you need. And that made those little girls sick. All right. Now, on this call tonight, Mark, you're outnumbered 2-1. Both of us are electromagnetic sensitive. And so we're feeling it as we go and drive through a city or have to navigate our day or do everything we can before we get back to the safety of our homes. It's for real. It's out there. And just unfortunately, certain people are falling into this category right now.
Appreciation for both of you having to deal with that, because most people probably think you're crazy. They say, well, what's the big deal? I'm walking around these sidewalks. I'm not having any problem. Why do you feel ill?
Well, let's talk about the people who do not treat us as crazy. That would be our state legislature. And they are consistently giving us ADA accommodations for a protected class for electromagnetic sensitive Californians. So it is officially recognized all over the place at the federal level and the state level.
Thank goodness.
There's no craziness here. This is for real, and it's in the books and their medical diagnosis codes. So, that's what I'm really trying to say is that people really do treat this seriously, and they should. and the wireless industry needs to, because they're going to be forced
And that is
to.
about the children in RIPON. I think that's Ripon, California. Supposedly they got cancer from 5G. But what we've learned from Paul is that it's not necessarily 5G. It's the strength of the signal, and you can have a high signal strength at
Absolutely.
lower G
I know that
levels.
situation completely. I know the parents involved. I know the children involved. And we brought them into our lobbying back in 2017 because they were trying like heck to get that tower turned off. And guess what? Sprint caved and they did turn it off. And it was a 4G tower. And it was up about maybe 60 feet off the ground. And it was about maybe 100 feet or 80 feet from where the schools were. But it went right into these classroom windows. And it's all just vertical, horizontal, and power, those three variables. And you just have to do a little, just draw it out on graph paper, right? So you go 60 feet up and you say, well, our goal is to go straight out, but in reality, that doesn't really happen. So we're going to tilt it to the ground a little bit, and then we spray to the ground a little bit. So they were in exactly the wrong place. They were about 100 feet away from something 60 feet up, so they got the full hit right in the classroom. That was the strongest signal coming off that tower. Well, they had what, 4 kids with cancer. They they had big surgeries and liver cancer and brain cancer and everything else. And then they also had teachers going down with cancer.
But that would have been the goal of the engineers, is to give a nice strong signal in the classroom so that lots of people could turn their iPads or whatever over to
well, there you go. They climbed the mountain. They didn't realize that people were falling off the other side.
Yes, or falling down the crevasses on the way.
Exactly. So the point is we're reaching the limits, folks. That's it. I mean, you can't biologically take these strength of signals this close. You say the signal falls off by the square of the distance, which really means this. If I go 10 times as far, then the signal drops off 100 times less, right? Well, go the other way. If it's much closer, it increases by that amount. And that's why these small cells at the end of your driveway are just a freaking disaster. So, yeah, but if you're in school, you're there 6 hours. If you're in your bed, you're sleeping for 8 or 10 hours. So you're right. If it's in your bedroom, immediate effects, you don't have to wait for cancer. So the immediate effects are all the neurological effects. Well, why is that? Your nerves are on the surface. So think about it. So right below your skin are your nerves, and they're the ones that get it first. And so you're going to get all kinds of foggy thinking and sometimes palsy and shakes and other things. So neurological problems are really the first. If you're having headaches and you can't sleep and all these other things, that's your first clue that you are getting microwave radiation sickness right there.
It's not just signal strength. It's a type of signal. When we went to 4G signal about 5 to 7 years ago, then that was a lot worse than 3G signals. And 3G in turn was much worse than 2G. I bought a 1G phone or 2G phone, the GSM phones, for my motor vehicle back in the 1980s. And it was a huge thing the size of a briefcase.
And did you have a gas engine or did you have a horse back then? Which was it?
I can't remember. But 4G was a big step because it was highly pulsed transmissions, and the FCC allowed 13 dB, here we go, 13 dB greater signal strength, or about 20 times greater signal strength, because it's pulsed transmissions. And FCC engineers have this theory that all damage is done by heating, and therefore if you pulse the signal, there's less heating because the signal's off for part of the time, which is rubbish. It's a peak signal that causes the proteins to get displaced from their orbits and not work properly. The destroyers were rigged up during the initial Spanish flu pandemic. The other thing that's very important about that pandemic was that after it, for about 5 years, the number of cases that was reported for tuberculosis was very much lower. So it appeared as though something had caused those tuberculosis cases to come on early and be a lot worse.
See, Mark, if you go online and there's some of these things on my website, you can see exactly what they did between 3G and 4G. It was just a bunch of extra math because everybody recognizes that 4G was much faster on their phone. And you say, well, how did they get it faster? Well, they didn't have more frequencies or they didn't have more bandwidth necessarily. They just figure out how to put more data on the same bandwidth by fancier math and more modulation and squishing it together with these pulses. So that was it. They turned the power up and had more pulses. That carried more data, but that was more dangerous.
But Magda did put out this graph, which is rather good because it shows that as you get closer and closer to towers, this is 0 to 300 yards here, then the intensity of symptoms and the type of symptoms changes. This was data taken from a study by Santini et al. In Italy in 2002. And Magda Habert's put it into this wonderful graphics format in her paper in 2013. Headache, difficulty in concentration, memory loss, irritability, skin problems, dizziness, movement difficulties, loss of appetite, cardiovascular, hearing problems, visual problems. They're all there. They're all reported in higher proportions within 300 yards of cell phone antennas. And Santini's not the only study that's found that. There are a number of others out there, although most of the studies seem to have concentrated on cancer, which is an error. Cancer is just one of the sicknesses which can apparently be caused.
All right, let me give you a real life example. I got a guy named Hank. He is living in Idaho now. The reason is he was in Santa Cruz and he was a general contractor and he was building houses and having a good life and raising a family. And then he was on a job site next to a cell tower and he was there for 3 months. That was enough to damage him. At that point, he could no longer do that job. He could no longer be around those signals. And so he had to figure out a way to move and change his career and do everything. And he did. He upped to move to Idaho, bought a 2-acre farm up there, and they're doing other kinds of jobs. And he's a good guy and he's raising his family there. Well, guess what happened? Some idiot who's about 800 feet from him decided to put a 60-foot cell tower up and disguise it as a pine tree. Well, Hank's got 2 acres. He's got fruit trees. He's got a beehive in the back. He was all set when they turned that tower on. This is what happened. What
happened to the beehive? Bees are known to be sensitive.
They all died. He's got it on video. They're all dead at the bottom.
They died.
And then Hank had to go to the hospital 5 times with a fibrillation. So the answer is the whole community is having all those symptoms that Trevor just talked about. They can't sleep. They got headaches. They got everything else. They went on nextdoor.com and said, hey, does anybody have any problems? They didn't say anything about the cell tower. They just said, hey, is anything happening for you? Starting on April 1, what's going on with you guys? Yeah, we have problems. We can't sleep anymore. We got these headaches. And they got the evidence. So they're doing everything they can to get that tower fixed. And fixed really means either moved or turn the power down or something.
The problem that most people have in recognizing what's happening is that they expect an instant change. When they pick up their cell phone and make a call, they expect to be sick. No, it doesn't happen that way. It happens the next day or the day after it. The immune system is continuously adapting and has a memory of at least 45 days.
Men Like God just commented that he has 2 5G cell phone radio towers, one of each, within 100 yards of his house. He said within 2 months of 5G that he came down with an unknown neuropathy, which has paralyzed him from his knees down, and that he's also in a wheelchair. I know your site is wirecalifornia.org/FCC.
That's right.
We also use that for people to find more about Trevor's work and to contact him.
That's right. It's all there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Professor Trevor Marshall. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're the best. Thank you.
That was cool.
So whenever I get a tough question, I call him up. All right. And I say to him, look, what should we do here? How do I really think about this? And he really steps me through, and I get to understand so much better just because he's designed antennas and he knows exactly how they work. He knows the limitations of the antennas and the limitations of the meters. And so the problem that we have here is that we don't have good consumer grade meters that can give you an accurate idea of what's going on. So, we constantly are going back and forth on how to do that better. But Hank's in a world of hurt, and we are trying to fight for him right now up in Idaho. And so that, these are some of the things that, in fact, in about 45 minutes, I may have to appear again in Dalton Gardens, Idaho, to sell the ordinance that we were writing when I was on the second show. And so it turns out that these things take a little time to get through, but it looks like that's going to be one of the best ordinances in the country, passed right up there in a little town.
God bless you, because this is something you're doing in addition to your job. You have a career, and this probably requires at least as much time and all of the communication. And well, obviously,
it's a lot of writing.
Yeah,
it's a lot of writing, a lot of talking. So because you're just trying to get these ideas across. But boy, if we could protect people, because we got a lot of electromagnetic sensitive people now, so we just want to make sure that they can safely enjoy their homes. And that doesn't mean you won't get cell service. You just don't need that signal in your bathroom. Okay. It's okay to step outside and make an emergency call if you need to. It's okay. And it's okay to buy a landline. It's okay. You can do it. Even a VoIP line, that's okay too. But you don't need that cell tower to reach all the way There's a telecommunications bill that was passed in 2018 after Mr. Ray Baum. And so who was Ray Baum? Well, he's the guy who was the staffer for one of these House of Representatives guys, and he was big on telecom policy. But what did he die of? Glioblastoma, brain tumor. What did Ted Kennedy die of? What did Beau Biden die of? All of these guys died of brain tumors. McCain died of a brain tumor. Come on, these guys were used their phone all the time, and this is literally what happened. So look, we've learned not to hold the phone up to our head. That makes sense. But it doesn't help you if that small cell is doing the same thing to you 24/7. Bring it all in by fiber. It's nice and quiet. I'll get fast internet. And then when I want to make a call, I'll go outside if I need a wireless call. And if I want a reliable call indoors, I'll get a VoIP line on my wonderful fiber optic connection. That's what I have, $50 a month for 1,000 megabits, a gigabit down, and 1,000 megabits up. And you know what I saw just this week was the federal Treasury interim rule for what they're trying to do now, pulling out of COVID-19 recovery funds. And they have just upped the broadband standard. And this is good because they used to have the broadband. They used to let these guys get away with, 25 megabits per second down and maybe 5 or 10 up. And they would call that broadband. Well, now they put a stake in the ground and they said, you know what?
It's the official term of broadband has changed.
Broadband, yeah. They're trying to say who qualifies for the money. If you're a provider and you want some of this incentive money, you have to provide service that fits our new definition of broadband. Here it is, 100 megabits down plus 100 megabits up. It's symmetric, finally, because what are they noticing? A lot of people are doing what you and I are doing. A lot of people are doing the video calls and they're doing all that stuff and they need as much upload as download. Hey, you saw today, they actually introduced Windows 11. Did you watch it? They had a little opening for that. It's funny.
No. Is there any highlights that to share with the audience? I don't follow it.
Yeah, it's actually, they did a good job with it. It looks good to me. They put a new skin on it and they've made it more efficient. And obviously they introduce more security things each time. But, the big problem with Windows, as you know, is telemetry. And so they, when you're using a Windows computer, there's always something going back to the mothership. Now, where did this really work out for us? Well, guess what? There's a lot of Windows computer users, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot more than Mac users. People don't realize Mac's only about maybe 9 or 10% of the market. Okay?
Yeah.
But here's where the telemetry helped us. Okay. You've got all these internet service providers trying to lie about how much broadband's out there. And so they got these terrible forms, 477, where they kind of say, well, in a census block, if we can serve just one home, well, then we're going to assume they all get the internet.
Oh, assume knowledge. What's a 477?
Okay,
other than it sounds like a good, like a nice Hemi engine. What's a 477?
It is a form. It is a form that is filled out with voluntary information from these little saints, which are called internet service providers and or wireless companies, who decide that I can game any system I want and I'll lie through my ass on the form. And the form says, tell us whether or not you're doing broadband in this geography. So they game it and they sit down and go, okay, we'll serve one house in the corner of the census block and we'll claim the entire area is being served. Okay. And that's what happens. It was just the massive rounding up. So they have claimed 21 million people do not have what was the old definition of broadband, 25 megabits down. What did Microsoft show? 163 million people don't have it because they have the data. They see what's coming in off the Windows computer all over the country. Go back into some of the update of what's going on in California with respect to us fighting these bills.
Would love to.
Because we have made progress. We are getting there. Looks like my volume is there. Make sure you can hear this. My name is Paul McGavin from Wire America.
We can hear it.
And what we would like to do is actually have our voices heard.
Thank you.
Sir, can you indulge us?
Thank you. What is your position? You're opposed to SB.227?
To every one of these bills that are breaking the law.
Thank you very much.
The context is that we have three really bad telecom bills that we're fighting. And we have pretty much a locked down Capitol. And you weren't allowed to walk around and talk to anybody or knock on a door or do any lobbying. So they're pretty much just restricting all public comment, and they're just voting these things through. So the only people that get to talk, pretty much you get like 2 or 3 minutes per speaker, to use 2 speakers total, usually. But on this meeting, we had 4 speakers that were all set to go, and they canceled them right out from under us. And they just said, well, we're not going to hear that bill today. And then we said, what is that about? And we started calling and figuring out what was going on. They wouldn't return any calls, wouldn't return calls, nothing. So what I was able to do is I was able to come into this meeting and got by maybe 10 or 20 minutes in, and I gave them 5 2-minute comments in a row. We're not going to hear them all, but the guy was willing to listen to all the feedback of how we're just getting trounced as the public. Now, what does this do? This sets up the public record for the challenge. And so what we're finding is that we have an excellent record right now that could set aside a number of these bills from these procedural errors. So this is why I go and do these things. Right?
Does California have 40 million people? I would get it. 30 million?
About 39 million.
Okay. And one person shows up with these arguments and heroically, I mean, you put the hours in, but just getting 10 minutes regarding this topic for all 40 million people.
Correct. And I wasn't given them. I took them.
Man.
So hold on. I'm going to give you the one that I think you're going to like the most. I have to get there.
The merits of the bill. It's a process, if that's okay.
Certainly, my goal here in my comments is not to duplicate any single one. It is to make sure that you have new and good, substantial information in every comment that I make. I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here to make sure that you're aware of all of the problems that we are facing as the public. Here's another one. We have some kind of COVID-19 quote-unquote protocol that seems to be enforced as if it were law. This is not law. All of these protocol things have been actually dismissed by many states who've had their attorneys just walk up and actually sue. It was an assembly member in Illinois that sued on this issue, and it got all taken care of, and there is no such thing. So the bottom line here is if you just look at the evidence of total deaths per 100,000 from the year 2015 to the year 2020, you will see that the numbers are, from all causes, total deaths from all causes are almost identical. Identical. So what are we saying to each other? That we really, really have a pandemic where there's no more total deaths in 2020 than there was in 2019, 18, and 17? Clearly, the evidence says otherwise. Clearly, the justification for protocols are not there. Clearly, this is not state law. I think you actually have to open up this place and allow us to walk around and knock on doors and do the kind of lobbying that we have a right to do. I thank you for that. So they listened to 5 of those, okay? And the guy who's running the meeting is the vice chair, and he let it go. So that means that he was sympathetic with what was happening to the public. As soon as they tapped him on his shoulder and the chair came in, he shut us down, and he wouldn't allow any more speeches. However, through the course of this 3-hour meeting, what I figured out how to do was to actually come up with creative organization names as my message, because they wanted to turn me into a Me Too only. I'm Paul McGavin, Wire America, I'm against the bill. What does that communicate? Nothing. So what I ended up doing was making up new organization names each time to get the message across. It worked. It worked. Wake up, America. You're watching Agenda 2021 and 2030 being voted in right now, and we oppose the bill.
Thank you very much.
My name is Paul McGavin. I represent Californians who stuck it out to the end and invite you to return our call, Senator Portantino, and we oppose the bill.
Thank you very much.
It's actually quite a fun thing to watch all the way through, but I have about 15 like that in a row. And so the point is, hey, take advantage of anything you can. Now, the next video I'm going to play for you is that we are actually making progress. And that is a good thing.
Looking for questions. You got a bunch of praise coming in, a bunch of things. People saying genius, sweet, game the system. My brother. Actually, that was my brother, EMT neighbor state, Phillips. I got to read that comment completely. My brother is an EMT in a neighboring state and is shocked how every auto accident is coded as CV.
This is showing progress right here. Okay. So here's people calling in by the phone. This is, once you kind of have your two speakers up there, maybe at the microphone, then they ask people to come in by phone.
96. Good afternoon, Mark Graham. On behalf of, there is no federal law, code, rule, regulation, or order that provides a deemed approved provision if your city misses a shot clock. And Crown Castle is lying. It does not take years to get a cell antenna permit. It takes months. I oppose. We oppose.
Line 124.
Hello, my name is Lindra Purcell, Director and Founder of Facts Families Advocating for Chemical and Toxic Safety. Our 2,000 members strongly oppose this bill on the grounds that it's unsafe for children to have cell towers emitting radiation 24/7 outside of their bedroom windows. Thank you.
All right. Now, first of all, look how empty this place is. And look at this woman. Hey, I'm an elected representative. I'm reading my phone. This guy is falling asleep.
She's candy crushing. Come on. She's candy crushing.
But this is where we are making progress. We're going to now hear the chair say a few things about this really terrible bill. You have to understand who this guy is. This is Hueso, Senator Hueso. He is one of the three major telecom sponsors of these bills.
How many senators? These are state senators, right? State level senators. How many do they have in California?
We have California state senators and California state assembly members.
Okay.
That would be our representatives. So there's 40 senators and there's 80 assembly members.
Got it. Okay.
And then what you'll see is that some of the bills start in the Senate. Those would be Senate Bill 556. And then the Assembly bill would be Assembly Bill 537 or AB.537, SB.556. That's how it works.
Assembly Bill. Okay.
These guys should really be having a nice little date and conversation about just loving this bill. They didn't do this. And what is going on? This is the theater. Okay. They've made all the decisions in the back room. They're coming out to have theater now to signal to somebody that maybe this bill is going to go south. Let's hear what they have to say.
And, Mr. Chair, there are no further comments at this time.
Very well. Thank you very much. Now we'll come back to the committee for committee member comments. I understand there have been some concerns about the language in this bill regarding issuing permits and allowing construction. And I know there have been incidents in different parts of the country where requirements have been more lax, where you've actually had contractors perform work without contractors' license or even permits. And so I want to make sure that as this bill moves forward, that it doesn't evade the public safety permitting process, and that it doesn't send messages to the public that they have no legal recourse to challenge the construction of these projects as they come in. I mean, I understand what the author is trying to accomplish, and I also understand that, you know, as long as we have competition of broadband in California, there'll be a healthy mechanism that'll help to ensure that we keep the costs lower for the users.
Let's unpack that. That's a big comment from this guy. That's saying, and the conversation goes on, and they talk about how, well, there needs to be language changes, and that might require more time. And if the lawyers get involved, we can't necessarily pass it this session. We might have to hold it over till the next session. And that is because we've been lobbying hard to get these points across. And we have given them the huge letters from the two attorneys that I'm pitching in there. I've got letters on April 14 and May 10 from Attorney Harry Lehman, and June 1 and June 8 from Attorney Gary Widman. And they are reading them, and they are having to react to them.
Would you say it's safe to assume that he's uncomfortable at this time?
Yeah.
He looks uncomfortable. The members look surprised at actually having to go through any type of debate on anything.
There hasn't been a debate like this yet on any one of these bills. This is the first one we heard. And when I was sitting up in the gallery and I heard this, I was riveted on him and going, what is he saying? What's going down? And what's going down is they're signaling to the wireless industry, you're not going to get this year. That's what they're saying. Okay. And we'll pay it off with Quirk. You'll see Quirk in the next one. So let me stop share, and then I'll go forward to the Quirk video. So the answer is it working? It's starting to work.
This is a very weird situation. He's having to debate and weigh the yin and the yang of a situation. It's a fascinating thing to watch, Paul.
All right, here you go. Now this is the bill's author reacting to what this guy's saying.
I'd like clarifying language that ensures that all projects comply with safety requirements, including dig safe requirements prior to the start of a project's construction, and also that local governments have a right to appeal for judicial review, and that process is preserved prior to construction beginning. And I know the details are always very important, so I'd like to work with the author through this process. I understand this bill will be heard at the next policy committee. We have ample time during that process just to provide the clarifying language, and you made comments to that in your opening statements, but I just wanted you to confirm.
Haven't heard about dig safe before. So far as I know, we don't contradict anything that would involve dig safe or proper contracting. Again, we are more than glad to look at that with you, and if you and your staff feel that language is needed there, we're more than happy to add it. The same for judicial review. Again, I believe the cities, when they went neutral on this, the cities and counties also believe that that's in there, but if you and your staff feel it's not, we'll put in clarifying language. That's simple.
I appreciate that, and I just want to make sure that, as we've had incidents in our state that have caused wildfires, and there have been other fires tied to the lack of infrastructure, safety, oversight, and investment. I just want to make sure this bill doesn't cut into making, the systems that provide these.
I pledge that I will make sure that you and your staff are fully satisfied with any clarification language you need. Otherwise, I'll make it a 2-year bill.
That's what I'm telling you here.
Wildfires?
Listen, this is for real. All right,
really?
So I'm going to tell you what we did. This is a major lobbying point. Okay,
I was completely unaware. I apologize for.
No, you got to understand what's going on. Okay.
Well, I know that it seems like many people don't listen unless you mention forest fires, which is odd.
We have the evidence. I'm telling you, for real.
So
in 2007, what do we have? We had a wooden utility pole that was overloaded with a bunch of telecommunications equipment in Malibu Canyon. What happened? We burned 4,000 homes. This is about, I don't know how many, 10,000 acres. Okay. This is about $60 million of damage.
The post caught on fire?
This is because a wooden pole broke.
A wooden pole broke.
Because it was overloaded with
weight.
telecommunications equipment.
Yeah, because I think
the equipment crashed into each other and caused this fire, and basically it was a disaster.
I didn't know that. This was 2007?
2007 in Malibu, right.
I've never heard of that story. Sorry.
All right, well, there are a lot of them like that. You'll find if you just go on cell phone tower fire on YouTube, you'll find them all over the country. Okay, these things fall over. We had one fall over in Chula Vista at a football field, and it fell throughout the night, and it crushed the stands. It could have killed all the people at the game. All right, and this happened no more than 2 months ago. All right. Well, how could a metal tower that was that tall and strong, that was, part of the light stand, fall over like that? Well, enter professional engineers. We love these guys. So we talked to Tony P. Simmons. We got him on the Zoom last week with my top attorney, McCullough, who I thought was going to be on the call tonight. And so he's his star witness in Malibu, and they're going to now shut down some towers in Malibu that want to get built. They're not going to let built. Why is that? Because of this Malibu fire, engineers think differently from politicians. Politicians look at it, well, how many fires are there? And well, if it's 1 or 2%, we'll put up with that, just to have the rest of the convenience. That's how a politician thinks. That's not how engineers think. They do this. This was a seminal problem. This was a huge fire. This is a preventable disaster. We're going to now get a settlement, $60 million or more, and we're going to start fixing this problem. So we uncovered 2 beautiful things by Scott McCullough. Number one, we have a General Order 159 in the California Public Utilities Code, which assigns this responsibility to the cities, not the state, to the cities. They have to ensure that these are fire safe. Wow. Now you go to the professional engineer, and he'll say, great, these are the 5 things you got to mitigate. So let's take a look at your application. Have you mitigated any of them? No, we haven't. See ya. That's it. That's the secret sauce right now. And who knows this? Well, our senators and our assembly members now. And so we're using all this great information in the front door to get them thinking differently. It's a nationwide problem. Why it's a problem more in California than others is we're going through major droughts, and we have tinder dry things, and they just burn and burn and burn. So, we have big fires out here every summer. I mean, we went through them from 2017, 18, and 19. And it's terrible football air quality, if you can remember. And we had a halftime, and we've just finished the third quarter, and we're about to enter the fourth quarter, meaning we have the last committee meeting, and we got whatever we can pull out of appropriations, and then it's the governor. Now, lucky me, what happened on June 15? We opened the building. We can actually now walk around the building. And I was there on day 1. And what did we end up doing? We got our documents. I had a whole stack of them here. These are individually addressed to every assembly member, and we put it through the mail merge and printed them all out. And I gave them to the security guy when I went in on June 9th. Please hand them out. They've refused to hand them out. So I had to come back in 4 days later and pick them up. Oh my goodness. And I carried them around from door to door to door. Guess what's going on? Some people are working from home. Some people are working from the office. Per diem is what requires these members to be there. If they're not there, they don't get paid. So they're all there. And so when you knock the door, who's answering the door? The assembly member, the senator. We got 10 conversations in that about what's happening. Day. You are electrochemical. Okay, everything you do actually has an electric current. You can measure frequencies coming out of your head. There's no problem. It happens all the time. We are emitting frequencies. We are much more connected to our electrical environment than you ever could imagine. Okay, so think of it this way. I've got 2 proteins that have to dock. Okay, so they have to be coming together in the right orientation at the right time to dock, do their thing, and then maybe split or make the other protein. Okay, well, everything can go wrong. What happens if I change my angle? I'm not going to dock. What happens if I'm moving at a certain rate and now I get extra energy and I'm moving like this? I'm not going to dock. You see, all kinds of errors happen when you imbalance your electromagnetic environment, and your cells are reacting to the microsecond pulse that's coming through. It is not so much the amount of power as it is the pulse is very high and then it's nothing, and then it's very high and then it's nothing. That's what messes everything up. That's the problem. Okay, well, I'm going to make two clarifying comments. Number one, we've already analyzed the Chula Vista Tower. We know what caused the failure of the tower. It was arc flash. Arc flash happened because the insulation inside failed. And so then from the wires going up to the antennas was arc flashing over to the metal side, and that weakened the foundation and it fell over. Okay, well, what's affecting the insulation? The microwave radiation. That's what's doing. It's deteriorating the insulation.
Wow.
So what do we have? We got a bunch of cell towers with very old equipment. And if you don't upgrade those cables, this could happen a lot of places. So this is a disaster, an engineering disaster that's going to need to be mitigated everywhere. So we like that. Now, if you're going to ask, I'm going to ask you a simple question, Mark. What is the opposite of wireless? And you might say wired. And then we say, well, one of the big things about the wireless agenda is its deception. So the opposite of wireless in our world is liarless. So you can watch this at liarless.com. And you will see that this is the tower that was outside of that woman's home who had the bloody mask taken out of her head after 3 months. Right here.
Oh.
I took the measurement. This is her bedroom. That's how close it is. This is 12 feet from her bedroom window.
Is that a street light associated, connected to it? Or is that just an optical illusion?
Here's your street light. Here's your antenna that's way too low to the ground at way too much power, designed to go out 4 miles in all directions, but it goes through her brain on the way.
It doesn't.
That's what's going on.
It doesn't look like anything. It just looks like a post. I was expecting a big scary box, with like electric symbol and maybe a skull and I don't know, wires. It just looks they make them look cute.
It
just looks like a pretty post.
There you go. And then you don't realize what it is. And that's the whole point. We're hiding them behind things. You have no idea how many of these things are around you because they're hiding them. Well, guess what?
Yeah, sometimes the things that can surprise me in the audience, are the simple things like that. It's like, here's the thing. It doesn't just naturally look like that. It took effort. I mean, of course, you want to make it aesthetically pleasing, but it's not just aesthetically pleasing. It's sort of invisible. You don't notice it. By the way, you got a lot of good positive shout outs from the chat. Thank you, Paul. A lot of people thanking you for your work.
No problem. Take a look at this. This is her room. That's where I took the shot right there. That's where she was. This is the thing. This is my card down below. Okay. And so at the end of the day, if you read this page, you're going to realize that this guy is important. This is Dr. Tomas Aragon. He was the director of health in San Francisco. At the time, we were supposed to turn this tower on, and we told him right up front, hey, don't do it. Doesn't have NEPA review. They turned it on anyway. And she got injured.
Paul, he has on a white lab coat.
He does. He's a doctor. He's a medical doctor.
I mean, the only thing he's missing is, the beaker in the back that's bubbling,
Well, let me tell you what else he is now. He got promoted in January of 2021 from San Francisco to the state of California. Say hello to Mr. COVID-19. Here he is. Okay. He is the California Director of Public Health. So what did he do? Well, he was assigned an assignment by this guy right here, holding up a binder of studies saying, hey, that woman who just this is before she got injured, put all these studies in from Joel Moskowitz, and they asked the Department of Health to take a look at it and come back with guidance.
Okay.
This happened in June. I met them in September. In October, I was invited into his office. And what did I tell him? I told him, in that woman's appeal, you will see that there is something in there that you have to pay attention to. It is this: child endangerment. It's beyond any rational dispute that kids' skulls are thinner and more pliant, than we humans literally get harder in the head as we age. And it goes on from there. And it references California Penal Code 273A. I read this to Thomas Aragon in front of his staff on October 22nd, 2019. Mr. Aragon has a duty to report child endangerment. He has a medical license on the line. Did he report it?
I'm going to guess no.
No. Does he need to report it? Yes. So what did he end up doing? He ended up bearing this whole review. He didn't finish it, and he assigned it to the California Department of Public Health, because that's a place where he could just let it die.
Plausible deniability. Didn't see it.
Hold on. Poetic justice. He never anticipated he was assigning it to himself, because he did this in December of 2019, and in January of 2021, he's the Department of Public Health. Poetic justice. We're putting him right in the middle of the whole thing right now.
Well, I hope you're going to give us a follow-up on this. You just
We'll
created a
come
very
back.
suspenseful situation.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey,
So
thank you very
I'll
much,
stop
Paul.
sharing and say goodnight.
Say goodnight. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to have you back on for a part 6. Absolutely. Hopefully,
And we'll
with
bring McCullough on for that one. You
another
love Scott McCullough.
ridiculously cooled guest. Thank you so much. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for joining. Hope this was valuable, educational.
thank you
I know
very
it
much,
was.
Paul.
And have a great
Okay.
night, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.